All right, welcome back, guys. So in this video, we're now gonna move things along. So we're gonna now begin chapter 8, right? So in this chapter, we're mainly gonna talk about what's going on with the positive mind or the subconscious mind when it's being charged up by the conscious mind. So in chapters 4, 5, and 6, we mainly talked about the body, right, in terms of subconscious activity. In chapter 7, we mainly talked about the negative mind, and that had to do with quantization. And now in this chapter, we're mainly going to talk about the positive mind. So the state the subconscious is in when the conscious mind is charging it, right? So that's pretty much what the whole chapter is going to be about. We're going to talk about transcendental mental states. So that's the state of mind you have to be in to actually charge your subconscious. So that's very important. That's what the whole chapter is going to be about. And as you're going to see, pretty much the rest of the book and the rest of the next book and pretty much everything we talk about after this in some way is going to allude to these mental states. So it's very, very important. So in this video, we're now going to talk about what states of awareness are, right? So you've probably heard people say that they were in an altered state of awareness or in a different state of awareness. Maybe if they had an out-of-body experience or if they were being hypnotized or in a state of hypnosis, something like that, right? But what is a state of awareness, right? And why does it feel like we have different kinds? Well, to answer that question, let's go over this next point. It says states of awareness are a consequence of the activity of the subconscious, right? So that's really all states of what we call states of awareness are. So to understand that a little bit more, basically it's important to kind of just reiterate pretty much what I said before, that what you call your awareness, right? With the term awareness is actually a consequence of the conscious mind, right? So your ability to be aware, or what that really is referring to, is your conscious mind's ability to experience reality, right? And all of reality, so whether we're talking about your emotions, your own thoughts, or feelings, or your five senses, right? So sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. Your experience of all of these things are actually coming from your subconscious, right? So like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about the five senses in book 2, but all of that is coming from your subconscious. So according to this framework and this theory, everything that your conscious mind experiences, right, actually comes from the subconscious. Maybe not your own conscious mind's thoughts, but your subconscious responds to it. So a lot of what you're aware of, majority of it, is coming from your subconscious mind. Now your conscious mind and your subconscious mind are intricately connected, or they're metaphysically glued together, presumably forever, right? So they're always connected with each other, so you'll never see the conscious mind having some kind of awareness without the subconscious mind being present. So awareness is very intricately connected to the activity of your subconscious, or what your subconscious mind is doing. Now, the subconscious at any given moment is always being commanded to some degree by your body, and it's being commanded by your conscious mind. So in the sum of everything it's doing from these two commanders, we'll just call subconscious activity. Now, so this activity, because your subconscious, actually, let me go over this next point. Subconscious activity does not radically change very often, especially while you're awake. So basically what it's getting at is your subconscious, the activity of your subconscious can be radically different from one moment to the next. When it's in a certain state or it's behaving a particular way, because your conscious mind's awareness of reality or experience of reality is directly connected to your subconscious activity, you could also say that how your conscious mind experiences reality is going to be a certain way if your subconscious activity is a certain way. And if your subconscious activity radically changes from the previous state, then your experience of reality is also going to radically change from the previous state of subconscious activity. And this is basically where states of awareness come from, right? So what state of awareness is, it's just a description we use that our conscious mind feels the need to use to describe the way our experience of reality reflects different types of subconscious activity. So for example, when you're awake, right, your subconscious is in its ground state. So your experience of reality is pretty much the way we normally experience reality as we're going about our day and doing things in the real world when we're awake, right? That all pretty much majority of that reflects the subconscious activity being in the ground state. However, when you go to sleep, your body's no longer charging your subconscious at the ground state, right? So your subconscious activity radically changes. So because the activity radically changes, your experience of reality is also going to radically change. So we would say when you're dreaming, right, that's a different state of awareness from when you're awake. But really what's happening, your conscious mind is really the same the whole time. All it's doing is experiencing reality through your subconscious, right? Nothing's really changed in that aspect. The reason we say it's a different state of awareness is because the subconscious activity has radically changed, right? Now, so I like to consider it to be very similar to states of matter, right? So if you take water, or let's just say H2O, right? So if you take a substance that is only made up of the compound H2O, right? We feel the need to call it different things depending on the states of matter. So if it's a solid, we would call it ice. If it's a liquid, we would call it water, right? If it's if it's a gas, we would call it water vapor, right? Now, in all these cases, it's still H2O. Nothing's really changed in terms of its chemical composition. So then why give it different names? Because the properties of each state of matter, they're radically different enough that we feel the need. We don't have to, but we feel the need to call it something different, even though it really isn't. So that's the exact thing that's going on with different states of awareness. Only thing that's happening with your awareness, right, is that your experience of reality is always reflecting your subconscious mind's activity. That never changes, right? However, if subconscious activity radically changes, we would feel the need to use different terms or say our state of awareness has changed to reflect that activity. We don't have to, but we do, right? And if we want to get very, very specific, we could call a million different things different states of awareness. It really just depends on how specific we want to get in terms of subconscious activity. So, for example, if we're meditating, right, we might call that a different state of awareness. Because when you're meditating, your subconscious activity changes. We'll talk a little bit more about how, but it changes a little bit from when you're in your waking day. So we might say, okay, when you're meditating, that's a different state of awareness from when you're just walking around throughout the day. Like we already said, when you're sleeping, that's a different state of awareness. Your subconscious is not being charged at the ground state level, so it becomes more excited and it's completely free. And so your awareness of reality is going to be very different from when it was in its ground state. So that's a different state of awareness. Like we also already said, when you're awake in a beta state, that's a different state of awareness. So that's just when it's in its ground state. We haven't talked too much about brainwaves yet. I don't really talk about that much in the book either, but you probably, if you're watching this video, you probably heard of what that is. So there are different brainwave patterns. So when you're in a beta state, that's when you're the most alert, right? So that's pretty much when your subconscious is in its ground state and you're walking around throughout the day. When you're meditating, your brainwaves generally would go to an alpha state. So that's a slightly different state of awareness. When you're sleeping, they'll go still be alpha, but they'll probably go from theta or delta. So those are the lower ones, right? Now, there's also gamma, which I don't know what those are. I think gamma states either reflect when you're in the zone or they're reflecting when you're using psychic abilities, which we'll talk about later. But another state of awareness, again, depending on how specific you want to get, could be when you're in the zone. So when you're performing some activity, when your subconscious is charged up to help you perform some activity at a transcendental level. So let's say that you're holding a conversation. And I used to do this all the time. When you charge your subconscious to be a conversationalist, right, at a transcendental level, and you're in a super creative state, right, and all types of creative ideas are just flowing into your mind, and you're performing them with nearly perfect delivery, right, that's called being in the zone. So you might say that's a different state of awareness because your subconscious activity is very different from these other states, right? So again, a state of awareness is just a reflection of subconscious activity. If we say we're in a different state of awareness, all we're really saying is our subconscious activity has radically changed from usually some reference point state. And usually the reference point state we're referring to is the ground state, right? So I wouldn't say I'm in a different state of awareness, when I'm just walking about my day. I could, but usually when a person says they're in a different state of awareness, or they had an altered state of awareness, they're talking about something that's different from the ground state, because that's the reference point. That's considered the normal state, right? Everything else is an altered state to some degree. But even the ground state is still just a state of awareness, no different than in all the rest of them. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how states of awareness work. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about, in the next video, I think we're going to talk about a transcendental mental state. So we're going to begin talking about what that is. And like I think I said in the beginning of the video, your mind has to be in this state in order to charge subconscious energy. So it's very important. And we're going to start talking about it next video. Right? So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.